Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Game of Death from 1978. So, this movie today is to be sponsored by nunchucks and yellow jumpsuits, tracksuits, whatever that really thing is right there. But so, anyways, firstly, I'd have to state that technically this is to be a winner of a community poll, but uh, really I'm just kind of going through the community polls and just kind of seeing if there's real true interest in something, or that there is to otherwise be uh, a voice out there that is to want to have uh, it just be heard. So if you aren't subscribed, go ahead and do it now. If you are to not be a person who likes to just kind of vote on things, like, you don't have to do it, but because at some point I'm going to get to some of these choices. But I also want to kind of have a lot of like freedom to like do things as I want to do them, but then also like look to see if the choices that I've already had, like if also people want to see them as well. So like, anyways, Game of Death. So this is a Bruce Lee movie for somewhat of a point. Honestly, I feel that Bruce Lee is legitimately only like 10 to 20% of this entire film. He is actually in it. And I think that's a huge distraction to this film. To really see how they put him in this movie is very distracting. But then also to just be like, man, if they could have had just one actor throughout this entire film, like, it really changes the grading of my of me within this movie, because to have really gone on and said with Bruce Lee that this movie is a great film, but mostly without him, it's just a solid good film. There is a really good story here. I feel that this movie is to of course have the syndicate who is going on to terrorize these certain specific stars and talent, because they have come influencers in their own right, and this company wants to go on and seek them all out to just be like, okay, like, you're gonna go on and you're gonna like work for us. And we have a defiance of Billy, who is played by Bruce Lee, who's like, no, like, I'm not gonna give you an answer. Like, I'm not gonna go on and work with you. And the more that you keep coming at me, the more that I'm going to turn around and come back at you and finally just take you out, because I'm done with this. I'm done with this bullshit. So, like, we don't really get to a point where I feel that Bruce Lee's character is to legitimately be like a character who is like, well, hey, you messed with the wrong guy kind of thing. Um, but I feel like there is a point of the film, which I feel is possibly a spoiler, that is to make this character to then turn around and like, that's where you can like obviously see where this character is driven to wipe these characters out. But so we have Chuck Norris and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and I really like how these characters are to be put within here. Like, Jabbar, he ends up kind of like being a very uh strong, menacing character that they have to go on to like figure out a way to take him down. And that I was to go on and just kind of be impressed by. There are, I think, going to be certain characters that I feel that I couldn't easily have found their names within the IMDb. So I'm going to have to figure out some ways of how to explain who they actually are. But other than that, I think, Darren Fact, I think it's about time to just kind of tee this up, tell you where you can go on to watch this film, and and go into full on spoilers about this movie, as I am to go on and feel that I've kind of stated that this is a solid, good film. But like, if anything, if people want to go on and debate the grade of this movie, I think like there is some wiggle room to say that this is a great film. Like, but just to me, like, there's just that massive distraction there. There is the poorly edited, goofy things in it that really like forces me to just be like, ugh. Like, there's so many iconic things also going into this film. Like the whole nunchuck thing is freaking amazing. Uh, the fight in the very beginning of this movie is to just be awesome. And we have this like weird intro that comes off as very much like stereotypical James Bond intro like thing. And like we have all these poker cards and this casino thing, but like none of this is to be tied to the film. Like it's just weirdly placed. But then also, like when I started this movie off and that intro came in, I'm like, is this actually a movie? Like, am I watching a film? Because this looks like a TV intro. Like, it just seems so weird. Uh, but yeah, I did really just one way or another just start to just enjoy this film. But again, just the distraction of it all. So Bruce Lee, come to find out, had created a martial art, I believe Muay Thai, or just kind of mixed martial arts or whichever. But so there was to have, I guess, allegedly been at some point in Bruce Lee's filming career, there was to have been one legitimate fight going into a movie set that the cameraman and the people working on the film turned around and just like, hey man, we need to shoot this fight. Like, I don't care if it's like a legitimate fighter and somebody could get hurt. I don't care. Like, let's just film this thing. And I'd gone on and seen the Bruce Lee like documentary movie or the biopic film and really did enjoy it. So if people have never gone on and seen that, it is so good. But then also, I had seen just kind of documentary things about Bruce Lee where like Jackie Chan would talk about Bruce Lee and how when he fought him, uh, Bruce Lee accidentally, like legitimately, kind of hurt Jackie Chan, and then Bruce Lee was to just kind of stop everything and just kind of like, oh, I'm sorry, just kind of really like I hit you, and Jackie Chan's like, it's okay, like we're fighting, accidents happen, but like the the time that just Bruce Lee like took to just care about Jackie Chan, like that's what he just loved about him. Uh, but also like funny enough, like I went on to just learn a lot of stuff about Bruce Lee without ever legitimately watching a Bruce Lee movie until today. Because I had seen also just little clips of Bruce Lee movies from the Last Dragon movie, where uh, the Leroy Green character eventually goes into this uh, one uh, kind of just discotheque like place, and the one girl just starts playing all the Bruce Lee films and all the iconic moments, and that's my connection to Bruce Lee much more so than anything else. But then also, uh, especially with this iconic yellowish tracksuitish, jumpsuitish like thing, we would also have to make the connection with this to Kill Bill, where Uma Thurman is going on and uh, fighting a number of people, and she's wearing this just kind of yellow jumpsuit, yellow tracksuit. But so, anyways, uh, when we go into actual spoilers, like I'm gonna tell you about some of the stuff that I enjoyed. Like the the girl who ends up playing Bruce Lee's love interest in this movie, I'm like, dang man, like, whew, smoking this woman. Man, just like the way that she first comes in, I'm like, dang man, like that is some clothes that she be wearing. Um, but like this actress also goes through this like full range of just like spectrum of like being the love interest and then eventually going into like this almost mental health hospital, and like really like this was to be a legitimately really good showcase of this actor. But so with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into spoilers of it all. Because all this movie is to be about is just this syndicate organization. I'm just kind of curious. Like, I had heard the word syndicate kind of being thrown around when it talks about an evil organization, but I guess this may have been where that had come from. But then again, maybe syndicate was always just a word to use for evil organizations, but I don't know. That's just me. But we have this evil syndicate that is going on and looking at all these like celebrities and stars in uh, their own kind of uh, paths and roads and whichever, and they're wanting to go on and find the best of the best influencer like people to then have them join their organization, like the best influencers, and trying to like moneyball all of this. So they're squeezing all of these people and like forcing them into their syndicate, and we finally have one character who's to be utterly defiant, to just consistently say no. And the more and more that these people are to be asking for that yes answer, the more that Billy's character, who is played by Bruce Lee, is going to consistently just be like, I'm not going to give you an answer. Like, are you expecting anything other than a no? Because you aren't going to get that answer. And eventually, he just becomes a man who is to be pushed too far, and is just like, okay, like you motherfuckers, like I'm gonna go after all you people. Interestingly enough, like once we actually do kind of get into the later half, like there is just kind of so many characters that at certain points, like I feel that I probably won't be able to come up with names with all of them. Like there's like a guy who like in the nunchuck scene, like there's this black like dogi dressed man, and I'm like, okay, who is that guy? And then there's a white dogi dressed man, like karate gear dressed guy, and I'm like, okay, who's that? Like, how am I gonna find that in the IMDb's? But really, I don't think that they probably do legitimately have a name. But like, maybe they probably do also, because I know Henry, the guy who like wear puts on the makeup in this film and is talking to um, Billy in this film about getting pushed and pushed back. Uh, like yeah, like they had him actually have a name in this film. But so it would just kind of be interesting to also kind of pick certain actors from this film and just kind of ask them like, how did it feel to fight against Bruce Lee? How did it feel to have done this film? Uh, but yeah, other than that, I think it's dare in fact about that time just go into spoilers uh, and go on to uh, pause this video, get out my mostly cast list, and try and break this movie down as best as I can from whatever I'm to remember in within my brain. And so let me know in the comments below if you were to been a Bruce Lee fan, because man, I'd like to see like what people are going on to state like what their favorite Bruce Lee thing is, simply because I feel like I want to get into like the most like iconic Bruce Lee stuff. Or obviously there are to be like from the last Dragon movie, there are to be obviously like certain iconic kind of things that Bruce Lee had gone on and done, uh, and was showcased in that film to have me just kind of want to turn around and figure out where that all kind of comes from. But anyways, I think it is about that time to get into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time to spoil this movie. So let me pause here. Let me get all my stuff, and I'll talk about this movie all the way through. Break it all down. All right. So, if I hadn't said already, yeah, this movie was, of course, chosen. It seems by percentage to have been the one for me to go on and seem most likely to go on and choose to review. If you are, of course, not to be subscribed upon the channel, and it seems that you might be interested in doing so to just be kind of eventually part of some community post or whichever, go ahead and subscribe if you like, but otherwise, enjoy the video. Also, where can you go on and see this film for absolutely free? You can go on to an app called Zelifonic, Zelivonic. This, as well as the other ones that I'm going to list here, are going to mostly be through a Google Play Store through mobile usage, but you can go and watch a ton of movies for absolutely free. A load of movies that I've gone on to see within this channel have all really just been for free instead of going through a Netflix or Hulu or Pluto or whatever that you know that will eventually have some monthly subscription, or have to go on and need to pay like per film, legitimately having to have you watch a absurdly old film for probably $3 to $20, and it just does not make any sense. But so other apps possibly would be like MovieBox 2 or Manic, Mannic. Both of these are to possibly still be on the Google Play Store, but I haven't really gone on and checked that today. So there's sometimes where a lot of these titles that seem are to vanish within the Google Play Store for whatever goofy reason, but I am to still be able to use these apps, and maybe it'll just take something as simple as a Google search, like going on to Google search a APK download for a app called HDO Box. That app you can go on and see like a really wide variety of stuff. There's a lot of obscure titles within that app that I can, in fact, finally be able to see a number of things that I probably would not have been able to through a number of other probably apps still. But again, I'm finding such a wide variety through a lot of these apps that I'm like, oh my god, luckily I can watch everything that I've ever wanted to see finally, and not have to worry about some kind of price tag on any of it finally. But so, let's go on and let's break down this film. So beyond its James Bondish intro that has all the character names listed, which I actually liked that because it made me have it be a lot easier to kind of look these guys up after the fact. Like, oh, hey, yeah, this is this character. Okay, good. Because otherwise, like, I would have had to have gone on and legit needed to, like, okay, like, this movie is, like, a number of decades old, so how am I going to go on and figure out who all these are? But I also just liked that intro, even though it felt like a TV intro. So, the very beginning of this movie is to be both Billy Bruce Lee fighting Chuck Norris, who's just called Fighter in this film. And, like, this fight is just really good to open this movie, and the way it all just ends is to have Bruce Lee kicking Chuck Norris down, and then they yell cut. And we have this guy going around and kind of giving people papers and like, okay, guys, like get ready for tomorrow. So Billy's on this camera set, so it's a very meta-like film, and Billy is to have wrapped up the scene, and like I was also just kind of like how they go into all of a sudden to show us that this is just an actual movie set. Like it just kind of took me for a loop a little bit to just kind of understanding what's going on. But then like we'd see that this light is just to fall from the sky and almost hit Billy, and luckily he had moved just in time. And so we'd have like certain crewmen of this movie going on and like, hey man, what the heck happened? So Billy retreats to his trailer to come to find a guy named Steiner who is talking to Billy about like, well, hey, like before you, I was to deal with this band in London were called the Flight Crew, and you know what? Like they didn't want to go on, and they didn't want to join up either. Come to find out, the lead guitarist had lost some fingers. Like, do you wanna end up like them, Billy? Like, do you wanna end up? You wanna lose some fingers? Steiner goes on to try and do the best way that he can to intimidate Bruce or Billy, and he takes this little walking cane of his, and he has a knife coming out of it, and then he puts uh, the walking stick, and he like shoves the knife into the mirror, and Billy goes on to just kind of do this kind of spinning like push kick like thing, and Steiner is like, yeah, like I really wish you wouldn't have done that. I'm gonna kill you. No, like he just kind of walks off. So, uh, we have a woman named Anne who is this musician, and so it seems that this syndicate who is to be attached to a guy named, I think his name is Dr. Land. I think that's who ends up being like the main villain of this film. Uh, so but yeah, so Dr. Land is interested in not only Billy, but then eventually he's also interested in Anne. And like it seems that Anne's contract is up, and like Anne is trying to figure out what she's gonna do and where she's gonna go. So Anne is going on and performing this song, and Billy ends up coming in, and Anne is asking Billy, it's like, oh, like if we're gonna go on. So Anne is to go on and ask Billy, like, well, hey, like if we're gonna have dinner, we're gonna have spaghetti tonight, right? And uh, the guy behind the the adjustments and whatever is going on and talking about their recording session and whatever, and Anne is like, well, hey, you're messing up my love life. So transition to the Red Pepper restaurant. Didn't realize that I needed to know names of places, but like bizarrely, there was actually like within this restaurant, there's actually an English translation of what it was that I barely could read out what it was, and eventually they said what the restaurant was later in the film, so I made that connection. So Steiner strolls in to this Red Pepper restaurant while Dr. Land is feeding these fish, and then one of his guys, I believe who is Carl, is telling Dr. Land that that some men are there to just kind of talk to him. So Dr. Land comes in and is to find out from Stick that one of the people that they were kind of forcing them into the syndicate had gone on to supposedly take his own life, but legitimately, I'm sure Stick had gone on to throw this guy off of this ledge to kill him because he continued to just say no. So it seems that Dr. Land and Steiner are to also be talking about this karate world championship, and they're they're really having some investors come in and put down a lot of money, like $1 million or $500,000 or something like that. Like they end up saying like $1.5 million or like they end up like saying exactly like the large amount of money of which these people are putting in to invest in this this bet going. And so Steiner and Dr. Land are talking about how this is taking place in Macau, Japan, and they have this whole poster and everything like that. So transition sometime a little bit later with Billy and Ann, who are driving off, and Ann is talking about her career in the syndicate, and is just kind of having like every piece of her life, like she's just kind of questioning it right now, and if over everything else, she is to really legitimately be in love with Billy. And so, as they're driving, they go into a fork in the road as Dr. Land is to at some points want to get his goons out to just like, well, hey, like, we got to give this guy a warning and then a final warning and then uh, bells and whistles are to go off seemingly after that. So Billy is to meet up with Steiner and a bunch of his biker goons. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the early parts of this movie is just kind of in the shadows. He's kind of in the background as he goes on to play Akeem in this movie. But in the early stages of it, he's just kind of in the background. So, like, there's one part where, like, I had to take a second, just be like, oh, like, he's actually in this scene, but you kind of just barely see him. So, with supposedly Bruce Lee fighting these people off, but it's really just kind of his double, we have Billy fighting these biker people, and bizarrely they have like these wooden stools and these like bizarre like wooden sticks, and they're like fighting Billy with these, and like we obviously have like the breaking of the stool, and there's some just kind of decent fights here because of course there would be because Bruce Lee. So Billy ends up getting pretty badly beaten, and Steiner's looking at Billy. It's like, well, yeah, like, make your decision, Billy. Like, I want your answer by the following morning. And then Steiner is to see Ann and just be like, all right, well. So, Billy and Ann finally seek out this reporter character who is Jim. So, Billy and Ann are getting this information from Jim about who this organization really is. And Jim is to mention about another guy named Wang who had gone on to fight Akeem, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's character. And then we end up getting this fight out between both Wang and Akeem here, and it's pretty dope. It's pretty awesome. So Jim is going on and stating that like these guys will do whatever they need to do to just kind of get what they want, and when they do get what they want, like, man, do they like just squeeze every nickel and penny they can out of you. Like, this is just not an organization to be a part of. Because Wang had gone on to fight against Akeem, and he ended up being dipped in a lake somewhere, and not in a fun way. So Wang ends up going against Akeem, and like there's this cool scene where he's like going up the stairs, and then Akeem like grabs him and tosses him down because he's so tall, and like all of this ends with like Akeem just kind of taking this guy by the neck and like lifting him up and then like flopping him down, and just really overpowers him here. Like, this whole scene is just really awesome. And then also we're early on like realizing like just how uh like it's the forced thing to just be like, well, like, yeah, he of course is really tall, but they try as best as they can to make this character so menacing and big in this film that, as well as just the veins on this guy's legs, good god, to make this guy just seem as menacing as he possibly can be, even though he's legitimately just kind of wearing this like shorts and a shirt and whatever, and he's kind of coming in here and he's like, "Eh, I'll beat you up." So Billy is to be mentioning about this like jade and clay as he busts this little Buddha thing, and we still realize that Billy is going to be defiant to the end. That like it really just does not matter to him. That like these people are probably going to kill him. That he's like, no, like I'm like I'm not going to bow down to these people. So Dr. Land is going on and sculpting away as Steiner and some of the men are just kind of talking. So Dr. Land goes on to get his men together to give Billy his final warning, as it seems that Billy has not gone on to give them an answer yet. So Billy then turns to talk to a guy named Henry, who is to be, I'm assuming, part of some kind of play organization, or possibly a part of some uh, movie set something or other. But like this seems more like a theater thing than it does an actual film. So Billy meets with Henry, and here's where we get the like, well, hey, when they push, you push back, like kind of a established dominance kind of thing. And like, if you're really thinking about going against these guys, it's like, well, hey, like, I have friends, like, maybe I can figure out a way to help you. And like, the dialogue here is really good, and I'm not doing it enough justice. But so Billy, while talking Henry, they realize that there are to be these biker goons that end up coming in, and Billy has to just kind of face against them. But then eventually he gets outnumbered, and he gets this kind of belt thing around this pole, and he gets taken out. And again, we'd have the number game stacked against Billy, and they'd have to go on and be like, okay, Billy, give us your answer. So after again, Dr. Land and Steiner are both talking to one another about uh, this investment that they've gone on to have been made on this one fighter, and uh, what they're kind of putting plans in place for this whole championship fighting thing. We have Anne, who ends up getting a call from Billy, and Anne is to be told that she's to need to go to this ferry for them to have this talk, because Billy really has to kind of just be in hiding right now, because he's going to be consistently like found by these people and fought by them. So Billy calls in like, hey, come to me so we can have this moment alone. I think the only like real miss of this movie is I don't think they work well enough the relationship between both Billy and Anne. And like it just seems that like there isn't a good enough reason for like Anne to like get to a point to where like she shoots people because of what is to eventually supposedly be Billy's death in this movie, but we'll find otherwise. But so I'm getting a little ahead of myself, and then also like Billy dies. What? Yes and no. So he dies on paper, let's just say. Um, but so Anne goes to Billy at this ferry, and Billy is to mention Anne. It's like, well, maybe you should go on and you should disappear and change your name. Like, I'm thinking about doing the same because of these people. And Billy's thinking that, like, maybe Anne should kind of go away so that way he knows she's safe. And also that these people won't go on and kidnap her to use against him. So I think this is where Jim is to go on and get a phone call from Anne, just kind of talking all this out. Uh, I think that's what happens. I know that there is like a phone call, I think, being done by Jim from somebody, and I know that it's not Billy. I think it's Anne. Uh, but anyways, oh no, Anne goes on to call Billy, and she mentions that like she doesn't feel that Billy is going to go completely into hiding, that she feels that he's going to go on and fight these people. And like I think they're just kind of like think taking and trying to figure out like what's going to happen next here in this conversation. So next up, we'd have this movie scene where these guys are firing off all of these guns, and come to find out, I think Stick is to make his way onto the set and is to replace one of these kind of rubber bullets or blanks or whatever with an actual bullet. So I'm like, man, like this is giving me flashback to the very original Crow film, because I guess at some point someone had gotten accidentally killed upon that set from a an actual bullet being put within one of the guns for some goofy saddening reason, leaving a uh, an actor in his prime just kind of left for dead, sadly. So Bruce Lee is to have come in, or Billy is to have come in, and is to have supposedly gone on to do this kick, and he ends up getting shot in the face, and he ends up going down, forcing us to transition him into a hospital. And Jim is talking to this doctor about facial reconstruction surgery, and that it seems that Billy will make it. And so we then have Billy, who is to have this kind of wraparound, kind of mummy thing about him. And so he's talking to these doctors. And so they fake Billy's death. They put on the newspapers that he's dead. There is to be this funeral being done for Billy. And there is to be possibly rioting in the streets. And there is to be an outpouring of all these people within the streets, just kind of in loss of Billy, it seems. Very odd that this could have gone on and been Billy's or Bruce Lee's last movie. So it seems that nobody is really in all knowing that Billy is legitimately alive. As Anne, it seems, is to not know that Billy is actually alive. So she goes on to mourn Billy's death and is to talk to Jim, and is to state something about how, like, even though you can go on and look them in the eye, like, these people, these syndicate people, aren't really seen. And Anne walks away in real just utter like mourning and exhaustion, and she is to have like been so brokenhearted by the loss of her lover that she is to fall over and pass out, then having them turn around and put her in a mental hospital, because of her just being like straight up so broken, from the loss of Billy, that she is to just need real uh, medical attention or mental health, uh, also attention. So Anne goes on to uh, this this place, this mental hospitalish like place, and at first she goes on and she's talking to Billy, and Billy is just kind of checking up on Anne, uh, to just kind of see where she's at, and just kind of talking things through. And then he leaves, and then both Dr. Land and Steiner come in, and they are trying to get to Anne and trying to manipulate her, and Anne like just shouts at them and just wants them to leave. It's like, why don't you leave, 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 leave? And like, so no matter what they say to Anne, Anne is just gonna be like, no, like, I don't want you here. I'm not going to like listen to you. So Dr. Land and Steiner leaves, and then Dr. Land's like, that bitch, like, like, I hate her. And so and like it's really just kind of funny, even though it's just kind of also in a very just saddened manner. So Billy, after his surgery, is going on to think of who he still will become. And so he starts drawing on a picture of himself to give himself a beard and mustache. And this other doctor is telling Billy, it's like, you won't need to have a disguise. Like, if anything, like, you're going to be like your normal self. Yeah, you'll have a scar that you're going to probably put some ointment on, it seems, in this film. But yeah, like, why are you thinking about who you're eventually going to become when you can just be your own self? But Billy is thinking of this so that way he can disguise himself so he can kind of freely roam around and not everybody point at him and be like, Billy! But instead, have him go into disguise to go up against his nemesis without them legitimately knowing who he is. So, Billy goes into this kind of like prop department or makeup department, and he takes this beard and he makes his way into town tracking Dr. Land and Steiner and Stick and all those guys. And he starts to follow them to this boat. This uh this boat called Barca. And Billy sees this boat off to the side called the Wa Loon, and Billy is to look at this captain of the ship, and it's like, well, hey, like if I pay you, like, will you follow this boat? And the guy's like, well, yeah, like I have nothing better to do, might as well. So when the boat stops and they make port or uh, they get to this pier, Billy turns to this captain and it's like, well, hey, like, will you wait here as long as I want you to? And I'll happily pay. So the funny thing of that all is, like, they say that, but then the guy never comes back to the boat. So like this guy could be waiting like years for this guy to come back. But so this captain is just like, well, yeah, like I have nothing better to do. Yeah, I'll stay here. Like, sure, like I'm getting paid for this movie anyways. So I think again here's when we have another uh, phone call coming. So Billy calls Jim and is to just kind of figure out where like kind of what's the big kind of scoop going on with these villains, and these villains are making their way, Dr. Land, Steiner, Stick, everybody, they're making their way to these investors to count this money to know if it's all there. And so Dr. Land is kind of finally to be kind of on his own while they're counting this money. So Billy kind of sneaks up on Dr. Land and is to want to figure out a way to get to him. So like he would go on and possibly kill this guy. So maybe this will all end. Like, because if you chop off the head of the snake, like what is the rest of the body of the snake? What does that go on and do? Just nothing. So Dr. Land is to call upon his guards and his people for help, and so then Billy backs off. Dr. Land doesn't right away think that this is Billy, but he goes on and speaks with his men. It's like, you know what, there was something very familiar about that guy, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And also, Dr. Land ends up calling to want to see if they can dig up Billy to make sure that Billy uh, is to legitimately be dead. So it seems that there's also like a lot of parades going on, and Dr. Land and his men had problems getting to where they were going because there was a parade going on, and in just kind of portions of this movie we would have these just kind of parades getting into these other people's way of trying to get to certain things. So transition us to this karate world championship fight going on between these two men, who I believe one of them is Carl and the other one is to be Lo Chen, who this actual actor went on, I think, and got eventually his own show. Uh, but so during this fight, there is some kind of interesting, like, kind of things about it. Like, eventually, when one fighter is to completely, like, kind of kick one of the fighters, and that fighter just kind of flings out of the ring, that was really impressive. But I think everything else is just like, okay, this is like really interesting fight, but how is it all going to get played out? And we'd find, I believe, the Carl character ends up winning the fight, and so he ends up going into the back and he's celebrating. People are popping champagne, and his girlfriend all of a sudden comes to him. It's like, well, yeah, like this is going to be his new girlfriend. All the interviewers should be interviewing her right now. So this guy makes his way. This fighter, the winner of this fight, makes his way into this locker room, and Billy is in disguise as this older man, making his way also into this locker room, kind of hiding out after he is to go on and speak to Anne and telling her not to go on and murder all of these men within this fight, because she was to have gone on and followed the syndicate and had a gun in her purse. And so the further and further she started to walk up to the syndicate, the more Billy whispered into her to, like, hey, like, do not do this. So Anne ends up calling Jim. It's like, oh my god, I think Billy talked to me. I think Billy is still alive. So, or no, like, she physically goes to Jim and tells him all this, and is trying to figure out this story. So Billy and this fighter are going on to this locker room and having a bout when it's revealed that this old man is to legitimately be Bruce Lee. So they're fighting, and there's a lot of decent moments here. I think there's like a surfboard maneuver, meaning that there's like a whole move where this guy is kind of taking Bruce Lee's arms and kind of making it kind of like stretched out behind him almost. Um, Very actually decent, balanced fight here. But all of it eventually turns out to be in Billy's favor. He takes down the fighter, moves on uh, to the next person he needs to kill. So Anne, like I said, she goes to Jim, and she's telling him, it's like, oh my god, I think Billy's still alive. And Jim is to like look at Anne of like, hey, you had this gun, like, I'm gonna keep this. And Anne eventually ends up walking away, realizing she has to figure out if she can find Billy so that way they can talk together. So Anne talks to Billy within the shadows, because heaven forbid you legitimately show that this actually is Bruce Lee. Throughout a good chunk of this movie, we have uh, the Bruce Lee-ish Billy character hiding in the shadows to convince us that they couldn't have gone on and at this point done any CGI or deep fakes to make this a better film. If anything, if there is to be a movie that needs to be remastered, it's definitely this film. But then again, why would they want to just spend that money to make a better quality film? But that's just me. So Billy speaks to Anne, and so Billy is to also try and call Jim, and Jim is telling Billy that's like, well, hey, like, I think my phone is tapped, and like, I think that they're after Anne. So hey, like, you just gotta watch out. So Dr. Land goes on to speak to his men, and he's like, all right, like, we gotta find this girl, and we gotta use her as bait, and we also gotta figure out where Billy is, because Steiner had gone on to find that Billy's grave is within it, just kind of some uh, paper mache or glass like head, and it's not really Billy. So like, okay, so now that we know that Billy is still alive, like, let's go after him. So these biker guys make their way to get to Anne, so they can kind of turn around and use her. So Dr. Landis will also want Jim to be followed. So Steiner goes on to kind of look after Jim. So, and also kind of talk to him for a bit. So here is where Billy turns around and is to figure out where Anne is, and is to take down these biker guys. And kind of very intelligent move here. Billy comes in to this kind of just warehouse, and he finds one of the guys, and he takes him down. He like kicks him, and they fall over, and he takes the disguise of one of the men, and here's where we get the iconic yellow jumpsuit. And I was like, all right, like, this is actually just strategically just very intelligent. So Billy gets onto the motorcycle, or he just kind of goes through these boxes to boxes and just kind of sees where all these guys are. But so how they end up getting dismantled and taken down is like, uh one of them ends up getting, like, Billy is to kind of do a wheelie and then kind of kick and take one of the guys down. uh One of them ends up, I think, getting just kind of tripped by, I think, this massive box and get kind of flung. One of them ends up going through this window, and another one ends up getting kind of blown up, but takes all of them down. Billy finds Anne. Billy rescues her. So Billy finds a stick, and so Billy is trying to figure out from Stick, like, hey, like, where are these guys hiding? Like, where is their hideout? And after Billy is to punch this guy enough and beat him down enough, Stick ends up mentioning to Billy, like, oh, they're at the Red Pepper restaurant. So he's like, okay, like, I found out where they frickin' are now. So that takes Billy to go to this restaurant. So here's where we start getting to the big iconic fights, the nunchuck fight, the uh the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar fight, and so on and so forth. So Dr. Land is taking another phone call, and it's like, oh man, like, our goose is gonna get cooked here, because legitimately uh we're gonna have to realize that, like, Billy's still alive, and also he's killing everybody. So Billy comes to find this black kind of geared up individual, and they have this nunchuck fight. Like, well, at first it's kind of like these unusual looking sticks, and they end up doing this like shave and a haircut 2-bit thing where they're like back and forth kind of doing this music thing, and then they go and fight with these kind of weird looking sticks. And once the kind of the sticks like that ends up kind of going to the wayside, they then bust out the nunchucks. And if throughout this entire film it's very unusual the way that they're kind of wah wah, because like the whole time that like these people are wah wahing, like I'm thinking of like freaking Muppets saying all these weird unusual sounds. Like kind of remembering the very first Spider-Man Tobey Maguire movie where every time he used to go on and kind of yell or whatever, he sounds like a girl. These characters just sound like unusual Muppets. I don't know why. But so now I'm probably gonna ruin this movie for somebody who's like, yeah, I do hear that. But so we have the nunchuck fight, and legit, like, I've seen other kind of nunchucker, or you're a chucker, huh? Kind of fights within Ninja Turtles, where they're kind of doing the dual nunchucking thing. This has to easily be like one of the best nunchucking things, because legit, like, how many other nunchuck movies have you seen besides maybe John Wick when he's busted them out in the later half of the John Wick films? But still, like, I think this is still a better one because it really is to like have a good well combination of things still to this day. Or maybe I just haven't gone on and seen enough good quality nunchuck films, because heaven forbid they legitimately use that in any number of rung of movies. But so we'd have the villain here, the syndicate member, who ends up getting like a scar of like X on his face. And so they go out and they're doing this nunchucking thing. And it seems a lot of times they're just kind of doing all of these moves. And then every once in a while they'll just kind of dabble in like them kind of hitting one another with chucks, or kind of doing other things. But like a lot of the times it's just kind of them just doing these nunchuck moves. And I'm just like, okay, like, let's have more fighting, please. But we would go on to have, by the tail end of this, Billy going on and taking the nunchuck and like taking it and like pulling it around to where it chokes this guy, and then he like twists it and just snaps the guy's neck and he falls. I'm like, yeah, like, that's how you nunchuck, motherfucker. So we then go to the next white gowned syndicate member, who I will probably end up just calling Backbreaker, because that's how things break within the tail end of this fight. This next fight, like, there's some good fighting here, but it's just all like we start to see like Billy getting tired here, but rationally, both of them are kind of getting tired for how much this fight is to go into blows. But like all of it just is to eventually just kind of break down into Billy just breaking the back of this guy and calling it a day. Like nothing is too like standoutish here, but like it's still like a good fight. Like all these fights in this movie are still good. It's just like nothing's memorable besides the way it finishes. So we then transition to have Billy going up against Akeem, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So right out of the gate, we'd see Akeem, who has used these kind of power moves, and Billy is to just kind of fall backwards, and Billy at some point is to be kind of become charging, and Akeem is to have his kind of like hands up and be like, "Oh no, like you're not gonna test me just yet." So Billy finds this guy just very intimidating, but then is to figure out a way to just kind of strategically figure out ways to like, besides the height advantage, figure out a way to make this guy like break down to his size. And Billy goes on to choke Akeem, and like that has got to be like the best part about this whole entire film, is just like having like these people are just kind of opposite ends, but then Billy still is going to figure out some way to almost wrestling wise, almost like professional wrestling wise, like figure out a way to just kind of take this guy out by just kind of um, like Herculean choking him, uh, as if to remember the Hercules movies where he would go and take the lion, he would grab the lion under his arm and just kind of choke the lion out, sadly. Um, but yeah, so I'm going really fast through these fights, but then I'm also just kind of bullet pointing them. So Billy then turns around and is to fight Steiner. So uh, there's some good things in this fight. There's some good stuff. Like I think we end up I think there is the walking stick that ends up kind of getting thrown in the mix in this fight. But really legit, like the only thing that really matters or was really cool in this whole entire fight was when Billy was to take down Steiner and have him fall down the flight of stairs. That, oh my god. I always love a movie that ends up having some kind of flight of stairs debacle-ish thing. Because I feel that that is the hardest thing to do in a film. And then also, like, it's just like, man, like, that's always cool, a cool visual to see in a film. But yeah, so not only does Billy like get his good licks in against Steiner, but then you see him fall down this flight of stairs. I'm like, oh man, this is masterful. So we see Billy, who is to try to make his way to Dr. Land, and by the time Billy gets to Dr. Land is just kind of having his eyes closed, and he's at this desk, and Billy realizes that Dr. Land had sliced his own wrists. But then Billy is to inspect the body a little bit closer and find out that it's just some fake. So Dr. Land is rushing like crazy to just figure out a way to get away from Billy, not realizing that he's just going to like make it to uh, this place that Billy can go on and chuck Dr. Land off of this building for having him just kind of hitting all of these signs and making his way down to his death through the fall of all of this. And legitimately, that seems to be the only real focus of how they're going to play this movie off. And then we like transition to not having really an overwhelmingly solid ending of this film, that like Billy makes it back to Jim and Anne, and they just kind of have this one last little hug, and that's how they end the film. Like, no, it just kind of ends with like, okay, like the last guy's dead, so like you should all be happy. But yeah, I think it's about that time to just wrap this up and get the heck out of here. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about Game of Death. Let me know what other scenes I'd probably forgotten about, because I'm sure there was a billion of them. Uh, or really, there might have been something that I could have said that wasn't exactly correct, because that always happens as well. And like I think when I started here, there's a lot of oftentimes where people would go on and kind of correct me, but luckily that is to be very few and far between now. Um, I think because they always through every video just kind of cement that I'm like, hey man, like whatever I can just kind of remember, just hey man, like It's off of legitimately, it seems like 1.5 viewings because I had started this movie and then like I realized that like okay, maybe I'll watch a little bit of this again because I felt like I missed a lot more than I wanted to. Or just the dialogue. I was kind of focusing more on like when are we gonna have a fight, than when we were gonna have some dialogue. So with that said, I think I'm just gonna go on and get out of here. Let me know in the comments below, whichever. Uh, More than likely, I'm probably gonna go on and hopefully do more community posts in the near future. There's a lot of movies that I have lists of that eventually could be a fun thing to see on a community thing to just kind of see what people's inputs are. But there is always to be just the randomest uh, of choices that people are to also want. Then I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I didn't really think of that. Or more than likely, also the alternative of like, yeah, I know that that thing probably really isn't popular, but like I also want to go on and just kind of get to things. And there's also other movies and shows that uh, people did recommend them and completely just kind of just lost complete interest in it. And just being like, yeah, I just don't think that that's going to be one thing that's just going to do well on the channel. But hopefully this one does go on and do well for the channel. Um, but again, like there are certain times also when uh, it may go on and be just like thinking what's going to be best for the channel, but then also like I still, as much as possible, just want to just find the enjoyment, find the fun, and find the one movie that uh, will hopefully go on and not only do well, but then will be a thing that I really want to like love doing and just be like, man, like, where did this movie just come from? There's some interesting titles that more than likely will do Bubkiss nothing on the channel, but there's just some stuff where I'm just itching to just be like, man, if only I can just watch this movie or this show. Um, because I feel that there's something really visually interesting about it, but I don't think anyone's going to care. Like, uh, there's this movie called Neon Maniacs that I thought I was like, man, like this movie looks really cool, but I don't think anyone's gonna care about it. And so it's just like, man, like this is such a lost opportunity for me to watch something that I think I'm going to enjoy, but like it's not probably going to be trending, or people are probably going to look at it and just be like, ugh, and then like I'm just like, man, this sucks. But I'm going to go on and with my 40 to 60 different movie shows and titles, figure out what is to be like the best to go out on the channel. Because I have a lot of just like for how I'm to go on and eventually like get rid of one title because review, I'll still go on and just whatever randomly within a day, like just find another title to have just replaced. So like I'm not knocking down these numbers. If anything, I'm either like adding to them or replacing them, or like even adding even more things on top of the pile. And I'm just like, man, like I need to figure out a way to just stop researching, but then also like some of the researching ends up being the video that goes out for that day, and then surprisingly that thing ends up actually doing well for the channel. So like it's all really about the luck of the draw in my eyes. But anyways, I'm gonna get out here. I know I've been ranting and whatever. Nobody really cares or likes that, but it's also to just figure out or figure out in my head or let you know what the future is for the channel. So, and plus also it's at the end of the film or it's at the end of the review. So, without further ado, bye everybody. Bye everybody.